Hello, welcome everyone to the first annual Game Awards. I'm of course your host, the Gaming Backlog, and let's get straight into... Wait, what do you mean there's already an award show called the Game Awards? And Jeff Keighley himself has tried to patent the name? Dorito Pope? Well, that screws things up. We already blew the whole budget, we did up logos and everything. What did that Nathan Fielder guy do to use the Starbucks brand that one time? Hello, welcome everyone to the first annual Dumb Game Awards. I'm your host, the Gaming Backlog, and let me tell you, we have a great show in store for you tonight. I might not be the figurehead of the Holy Dorito Church, but I am an avid gamer nonetheless, and let me tell you, this year, I played some games. Since starting the channel at the end of July, I've been able to strike off 200 hours worth of video games from my backlog. At least it's 200 hours as far as you know. Calm down, it's all stuff you'll see in time. Now, with 200 hours over the course of around 4 months, if we run the numbers, we'll see that at this rate the backlog will be completed by around... Silksong's release date? I joke. Do we have anyone from Team Cherry in the audience tonight? Well, okay then, tough crowd. I haven't just been clearing the backlog though, I've also been playing some new releases that came out. The point of this award show is to highlight some of the games that I've played throughout this year and let you know my thoughts. This is of course because I make YouTube videos, so I must squeeze the last drop of content out of everything I do, or I've wasted my time. And don't worry, those of you who want to see the number go down, a couple of these games were in fact on my backlog, and as they appear, you will see that counter make some progress. As part of a push to the end of the year I called Dry 2025, I aimed to enter the new year completely dry, by which I mean with no 2024 play. The aim is to have no 2024 games in my backlog by January 1st, and I'm excited to say that I think I was mostly successful. I am currently playing through Metaphor ReFantazio, and there are a couple of games that I did not quite get to, though they will not be getting added to the backlog. I feel comfortable excluding them from the list and continuing to play through the backlog at the start of next year, as soon as I've finished Metaphor. Now, without further ado, let's get to the rankings. I will begin with the game that I enjoyed least this year, and I will finish with the coveted Dumb Game of the Year, my personal favourite game that released in 2024. Grab your Mountain Dew and Doritos and get comfortable. I'm Dumb Jeff Keighley, and this is the Dumb Game Awards. Wait, so I can just say Game of the Year? There is a grand total of 15 games from this year that I played this year, and unfortunately, something must be in last place. This game is far from bad. In fact, it's pretty good, demonstrating how selective I am with games that I play in the first place. It is also, however, the only game on this list that I did not play all the way through, and don't intend to go back and finish it off, and that is Space Marines 2. Your booze mean nothing to me. I got a little over halfway through the campaign for Space Marine 2, and the fact of the matter is this game just isn't really for me. The Warhammer universe is fascinating at times, but I have more fun reading a wiki on the lore than experiencing it firsthand, and this translates over to this game too. Mechanically, I can't really fault it. The game runs and looks phenomenal, the swarm engine is a technical marvel, the weight of your character is believable, and the multiplayer? Oh, the multiplayer is such good fun. But that multiplayer doesn't make up for the fact that I found the main campaign not particularly interesting. The main gameplay loop of the combat, both melee and in ranged, just didn't do it for me. Not because there's anything wrong with those aspects of the game, but because it just failed to captivate me. I really should have expected as much. These kinds of games aren't something I enjoy that much. It's pretty rare a third-person shooter really stands out to me. It's essentially the same reason that Gears of War games didn't click with me particularly, and why I never bothered playing Helldivers 2. And look, I keep qualifying these statements with "in my opinion" and how it felt certain way to me, because again, I think the game is really well made. I think that if you enjoyed it, that is so good, and I'm glad you do. I wanted, and still do want, the game to be successful. If this combat looks fun to you, then play the game. You'll probably really love it. There really isn't much more to the game though than this combat. So if walking between areas and killing swarms of enemies on repeat for 8 hours bores you like it did for me, it's probably not for you either. But that's okay. Not every game has to be for every person. Here to accept the award is Titus.
For the Emperor!
Thank you, Titus. Glad you could be here. When I first read the name of the next game on the list, I thought there must have been a mistake. After all, here at the Dumb Game Awards, we care about two things: video games and integrity. Integrity in both talking our truth, but also of sticking to definitions. The next game isn't a game at all, it's a DLC. As such, it should frankly be disqualified. However, if it's game enough to be a Game of the Year nominee for the real Game Awards, I guess I have no choice but to include it myself. Congratulations, Shadow of the Erdtree. Shadow of the Erdtree is a DLC expansion for Game of the Year winning Elden Ring. Elden Ring is one of my favourite video games in recent memory, so for me to put Shadow of the Erdtree so low must really mean something. I have softened on it somewhat since release. Balance patches have helped this, making the experience feel a bit more cohesive, and the sheer scope of it alone is enough to be impressed by. I still stand by a lot of what I said in my video about Shadow of the Erdtree though, in that I think it's overall a disappointment to me. I don't know what I thought an Elden Ring DLC would look like, but I think the things it does and the world as well as the bosses that it introduces, well, call me Shania Twain, because that don't impress me much. Anyway, because of how much I talked about it before, I won't stay on it too long. I just feel like that the artfully crafted difficulty curve of the older Souls-like games is mostly lost when moving to open world. Elden Ring's base game faces this issue too, don't get me wrong, I just find that the issue is more pronounced when coming to the DLC. The introduction of the Shadow Tree fragments fixes an issue that I don't think was there in the first place. Instead, by tying your power so closely to the collection of these, in addition to the less linear way you explored the Land of Shadow, you dramatically shift from being underpowered at the start of the DLC, overpowered towards the end, and then humbled all over again by the stupid Radahn fight. No, I do not just need to get good. In addition to what I mentioned, I also don't think a DLC should be eligible for Game of the Year. That other Game Awards show that's less interesting and hosted by someone far less handsome should just have a different category for Best DLC. Because of this, Shadow of the Erdtree has some points docked and comes in at number 14. To accept the award, we have the From Software development team.
Real quick, I want to thank everybody and say that I think I want to nominate this award to my Reformed Orthodox Rabbi Bill Clinton. Thank you, everybody.
Oh man, can't believe that happened to them twice. From here on, every game has more positive elements to talk about than the negative ones, and this next one is an indie game that frankly did Souls combat better than Shadow of the Erdtree did. In my opinion. Can't get upset at me now, comment section, just an opinion. Another Crab's Treasure is an indie Souls-like that asks the question, what if Nintendo made Dark Souls? And then it continued to answer that by being just dumb fun. Again, this is another game that I made a video on already, where this game takes Dark Souls and then contrasts the darkness by being goofy and colourful, revealing that deep down there is a lot of comedy in Dark Souls. It nails the genre, and also avoids feeling like every other Souls-like with its unique parry system that requires you to release a button right before being hit, as opposed to pressing a button. It's novel, it takes some getting used to, but it differentiates it from everything else that's out there. The story is certainly there, with the environmental themes that you would expect from a game with microplastics as its main currency, and while the writing can get a bit cringy and millennial coded for my liking, plus I feel like Firth's characterization was a bit heavy-handed, making him into a straw man, he is weakened as a character and as a villain, so because of that the story trips a little right at the finish line. I still think that the good outweighs the bad, and Another Crab's Treasure is a worthwhile experience. Here to accept their award is Krill.
Right there! Whoa! What happened?
Can't catch a break, hey kid. Anyway, that's 2 Souls-likes in the bottom 3. Maybe the genre's become oversaturated and I don't find games in the genre compelling anymore. For you guys at home, we in showbiz call that foreshadowing. Keep that in mind till later on in the show. The next game I know got a lot of attention at launch, and I would consider one of the biggest games of the year that I didn't play until several months after launch, and that would be Dragon's Dogma 2. After about a week in the character creator, I was finally ready to begin with Dragon's Dogma 2. I was pretty keen to start it up honestly. I know the original is a bit of a cult classic and I was in the mood for a fantasy open world adventure. This game has a lot of strong points and I certainly found some fun to be had with it. But if I was to ultimately describe Dragon's Dogma 2 in one word, it would be tedious. The problem with the game is, doing much of anything feels like a bit of a chore. Most of the side quests are boring and unfulfilling, typically fetching an item or killing a monster. The inclusion of microtransactions, while mostly fine as these items are all available in the game and aren't necessary for beating it, is still clearly present in the world's game design. By making fast travel an expensive luxury that you can't use freely without running out of fairy stones, this item that helps facilitate your fast travel by sending you to a port crystal, the game incentivizes player purchases through this design decision, punishing players who don't purchase these items. Ox carts are a substantially cheaper method of fast travel in the game, however they are very limited in where they can go, only being able to travel between particular cities and towns, and additionally they aren't even completely reliable as you can be attacked midway through the journey. This could be fine and even a fun world building decision, however it is extremely easy for the monsters that attack you to destroy the ox cart, now leaving you stranded, often several minutes of running away from your destination, and that's if you avoid all combat on the way. With combat it could be upwards of half an hour. For all my complaining though, the game has a lot of cool stuff going for it, hence not being further down the list. The pawn system in this game is actually so cool. You have 3 pawns that join you, one of which is your main pawn that you create, leading to another weak in the character creator, and 2 others you can hire from a large pool of available pawns. These can be made by the developers, or more interestingly, they can be the main pawns of other players who played the game. The things that player has done influence the pawn's knowledge too, so if they found a secret near where you are, then the pawn might be like, hey, my master found something near here, want me to lead you to it? Then you can go get the pawn to show you where that secret item is. On top of that, if you find a secret while someone else's pawn is with you, they can then go back to their master and tell them about it. It's this awesome natural collaboration between this network of players and their pawns that I think is such a cool idea. Add to that the combat is pretty fun, which thankfully it is because you do so much of it anytime you decide to take more than 5 steps outside of a town. Clearly drawing inspiration from Shadow of the Colossus, but doing enough as well to make it feel like something new. Fun game that frankly for me is a little bloated and a little bit rough around the edges, but nothing really beats that experience of fighting a griffin for 10 minutes only for it to be injured enough to fly away, but you grab onto it and fly with it to a whole new area to continue the fight until the death. Awesome memories like that help make up for its many shortcomings. I don't have a joke for someone accepting the award, so instead we're going to use our last fairy stone and fast travel to the next game. What is there to say about our next game that hasn't already been said? It's the one Joker-related thing from this year that people actually liked. It's the poker roguelike everyone can't get enough of. Balatro hypnotizes the player with lights and sounds as the funny numbers go up, tickling that monkey brain like few other games have. This game may as well be pure dopamine, with over 100 jokers to play around with, each with unique effects. Add in different decks, planet cards that improve your poker hands, tarot cards, spectral cards, vouchers and even tags for skipping blinds, and there's heaps of replay value in this game. Now, I'll admit this game was a bit of fun, but it didn't click with me as much as I think it did many others. I've heard countless stories of Balatro addiction, but didn't experience it for myself. I played for a couple of hours, sure, but then I put down the game and moved on, totally content with the experience I had with it. For that reason, it's as low as it is. It's a fantastically designed game, but I tend to prefer a game with a strong narrative and emotional impact, and I can hardly fault a game like this for that, since that would probably just make the game worse at what it's setting out to do. Here to accept the prize is the Balatro Joker. Right, so I was wrong. See, Balatro released for mobile a few months back and I haven't been able to stop playing this game since it released. I think I get it now. It was never a problem with the game, but the format. On console, there's an opportunity cost of playing it instead of something else, but I have to be in front of a TV to play it. On mobile, I can play and do wherever now. The game is crack in card game form. Someone needs to take this thing away from me. The next game is another standout indie title from this year, Animal Well. Well, I sure hope he is. Animal Well is a game published by Big Mode Games. That company started by Video Game Donkey. That's enough about other channels though, let's talk about me. I thought Animal Well was pretty cool. It's a Metroidvania as well as a Metroidbrania, apparently. A Metroidbrania. You control this cute little blob as he travels around this hostile world. Your character can't really defend himself though, there's no combat to speak of, so your only real option is to try and avoid the danger. Something that I don't see many people mention is that this game is tiny. No, not the world, it's actually surprisingly expansive in that regard, but the file size is incredibly small. It genuinely took me by surprise. And to be as polished as this game is, your power-ups are far from the usual affair from this genre, unlocking things like a slinky or a yo-yo, but these tools are no less useful than what you'd find at any other Metroidvania. It's a short experience, I was able to get through it in a single sitting, but it manages to be memorable through its engaging mechanics, beautiful pixel art, and haunting chase sequences. Here to accept the award is Mr. Big Mode himself. Blip. Something that I've noticed is, despite being a lifelong fan of Nintendo games, having played them basically my entire life, I don't talk about a lot of first-party Nintendo titles on this channel. Part of this is likely because I usually play these games around release, preventing them from being part of my backlog, and another part is that as of late, I don't think we've been seeing a lot of must-play Nintendo games outside of your Tears of the Kingdoms. Speaking of Zelda though, can I just say that it's really nice to finally have another 2D Zelda game? Link's Awakening notwithstanding, the last real new 2D Zelda game was back in 2013 with A Link Between Worlds. This new one, Echoes of Wisdom, has you controlling Princess Zelda, as Link has been unfortunately captured and cannot go around saving Hyrule this time. With a staff that grants her ability to spawn items and monsters, Princess Zelda must travel around Hyrule mending rifts with the help of Tri. Tri can be leveled up by completing these rifts, and doing so gives you the ability to spawn more creatures, or sometimes reducing the cost of a selection of them. The Zelda series has completely embraced having puzzles with multiple solutions, a trend that they really started with Breath of the Wild. You can get pretty creative with how you decide to use your powers, meaning that the only real limits are your imagination. Aside from these good notes, however, the game ultimately culminates in one of the most tedious final bosses in Zelda games, which is saying something given how tedious some of them can be. Having another 2D Zelda is nice, and a mediocre Zelda game is still better than your average game. It is a perfectly cromulent video game, an above average game even. Unfortunately though, I think for me, between the tedious combat and the below average Zelda dungeon design, the game fails to reach the heights a new 2D Zelda could have. That being said, I really appreciate the experimentation. I'll always prefer a bad game that tries something new to an average game that plays it too safe. For this reason, I appreciate Echoes of Wisdom and how it falls into the Zelda series. It won't be remembered as one of the worst Zelda games, I don't think. I think it will place somewhere around the middle of the pack. For the none of you out there that asked, here are my ranking of the Zelda games. I know some of these are wild placements, I don't care, fight me in the comments about it. Here to accept the award is none other than the hero of legend, Link. Oh, well, moving on. Now, I enjoy a good tactics game. Fire Emblem is one of my favourite game series. That's why Unicorn Overlord ticked an itch that I really needed scratched. There is a frankly absurd number of characters. The downside to this is, none of them are really as fleshed out as they would be in an equivalent Fire Emblem game, save for a few important ones. Outside of the pretty run-of-the-mill characters and standard story you'd expect from a game like this, there's a substantial amount of strategy gameplay under the hood. Each character has a list of tactics they will use and a logic that will define if and when they will use those moves, split between AP, which is a resource for things like attacks, and PP, which is a resource for buffs and debuffs and the like. Each of these characters is also equipped with items that augment that character, for example, providing more AP or PP, providing new skills or flat stat boosts. That's just one layer though, multiply that by all of your characters. But characters don't typically go into battle alone, they go in units, collections of 2 to 5 of these characters. How those characters interact and complement each other dictates how well that unit will work. Add into this that particular characters have strengths and weaknesses, such as armoured units having low magic defense but staggeringly high physical defense. This kind of thing is true for the absurd number of classes this game has, which all fill particular niches, and you can begin to see that there's a lot to keep track of. Once on the field though, it goes further. There are overworld traps that can damage your units can assist other units if they're close enough and have the energy, but garrison units have increased defense and consist for free. Siege weapons can be used by your units, environmental considerations, valor skills. There is a depth to this game that I feel as though I've only barely managed to scratch the surface of. You can, and I did, spend hours going through your characters and finding strategies and equipping them with the best items and thinking carefully through their tactics, only to then need to decide how to sort them into units. Overall an impressive tactics game, which is why it ranks so high for me. Here to accept the award is Elaine.
Balatro!
I honestly went into this game thinking it was going to be somewhat mediocre. After all, big titties a good game doth not make. I'm glad to say though I was proven wrong, because I actually really quite like Stellar Blade. The combat can be a lot of fun and the game is stylish as all hell. The game starts off somewhat slow with the first couple of introductory levels not really doing much to hook me in. By the time you get to Zion and the game starts to open up a bit, what the game's doing really starts to click. Stellar Blade absolutely wears its influences on its sleeve. I haven't played Nier Automata yet, it's on the backlog though, so stay tuned for that, but this game evokes Nier Automata constantly in its world design and its characters. Speaking of the characters, there's some actually pretty compelling side characters you meet throughout this game. The side quests usually have some kind of interesting story going on, even if most of them boil down to go to a place, defeat some enemies, retrieve an item. The turns that they take narratively though, plus how many of them progress your Lily meter, which needs to be maxed out to unlock the true ending, incentivizes you to interact with this side content. This is how you make side quests I actually want to do, Dragon's Dogma 2! Here to accept their award is Eve.
No. There's no way. That's impossible.
As someone who grew up with the Tenkaichi games, let me tell you that Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is everything that I could have wanted for a new game in the series. It managed to be everything I remembered the games being and more. The combat feels fantastic, and this game gets the adrenaline pumping in me like few other games have. I have had matches where I realised at the end I was holding my breath the entire fight. The roster is huge, and rightfully so, as we're spanning nearly 40 years of history with this series. Being a fighting game, the single player takes a bit of a back seat as the multiplayer is the main focus of the game. This is fine, fighting games are like this by their nature, but I don't play a lot of, if any, multiplayer games these days. Not after that soul-sucking grind that was Apex solo queue ranked on console. For For that reason, I just played the single player, which frankly is doing the game a bit of a disservice. It was a lot of fun replaying fights and trying to achieve the alternative completion requirements, and the what if stories are a lot of fun. Boiling it down though, the biggest thing I like and its largest strength is how it successfully leverages nostalgia in a way that doesn't feel cheap. It evolves the Tenkaichi formula without souring the memory of those original games, so hats off to them for making this work. Here to accept the award is Yamcha. Oof. Now, putting Metaphor ReFantazio on this list might be cheating, and honestly its position is subject to change once I finish the game. After all, this is a massive RPG, and I likely won't know the true quality of this game until the end. Still, I'm happy putting in this position for now, though likely could go higher in the future. I'm not familiar with the Shin Megami Tensei series, however I've played Persona 5, and the similarities are clear. Instead of telling a story about school children, the story explores complex political power struggles and racism and exploitation. Battles take place in turn-based RPG combat, not unlike the Persona games, and by extension SMT, so I hear, with a familiarity that makes the game immediately compelling. Add to this that the archetype system, not unlike the job mechanic from Final Fantasy, and the changes enough to make the formula not feel stale. Style and presentation wise, this might be the best an Atlas RPG has looked. The menus are breathtakingly beautiful, one of the most gorgeous looking games, frankly, of all time. And look, this section is the last I've had to write and record, and I have deadlines, so let's move on with the show. Just know Metaphor is really good, and will probably keep getting better as I continue to play it more. Let me get back to playing games. No award accepting joke, sorry, we're on a deadline. Next game. A game that I paid little mind until release. Surprisingly, this game was disgustingly good. The Silent Hill 2 remake is an incredible game. The story to me, at least, was new and gut-wrenching, as I haven't played the original Silent Hill 2. Nevertheless, I can certainly see why the original is as highly regarded as it is. The themes it tackles and discusses are so dark, so real, but it's handled in the most tactful way. It doesn't fall into the common tropes of glorifying mental illness or trauma, but instead exploring it in a raw, uncompromising way. The characters of Silent Hill 2 are actors in a tragedy, each with their own fully realised stories, none of them making it out unscathed. Playing this game is a deeply uncomfortable experience. It is not fun to play this game, but that's actually high praise, as it's exactly how it was intended. Combat isn't too hard as long as you're paying attention, but it can get exhausting after a while. Each area just makes you want to hurry up and move to the next one, but every subsequent area is more unsettling than the last, leaving you no reprieve. The lighting can sometimes make it nearly impossible to see what's only a few feet ahead of you. None of these things are criticisms though, they're all strengths of this game. It makes you feel what it wants you to feel when it wants you to feel it. I genuinely love this game. It was a miserable experience. I would recommend it to anyone. Here to accept the award is none other than James Sunderland. From shooting monsters in a pool to shooting kids in a school, our next game is Persona 3 Reload. A remake of Persona 3 from PS2, Reload modernizes the game using the design principles that were so successful in Persona 5. Now, I adore Persona 5, so I was excited to play this game. Ultimately, a Persona game lives and dies by its characters and its story. The core gameplay loop of going to dungeons at night, then going to school and spending your free time with social links during the day is satisfying, but ultimately nothing that would normally put something this high on the list. Where Persona 5, and by extension this game as well, excels is in its style, its music, its characters, and its story. I think every social link in this game is at least good, even the ones that most people generally consider bad. A large number of them, as well as a lot of other things in this game, revolve around the theme of death. Like look, dead dad, dead mom, dead dad, dead brother, dead owner, dead beat, dead kid, dead, oh, spoilers. Persona 3 is the first appearance of the Reaper in the Persona series, a boss enemy designed to place a time limit on how long you can dawdle in a dungeon. Can robots die? How do we move on after death of someone important to us? The way this game climaxes is superb, and it hit me so hard. I really wasn't expecting it. I figured it'd be the case of this bullshit JRPG pool thing where everyone managed to defeat the god in the end, but it doesn't end that way. As the final cutscene played, the credits rolled, then I was brought back to the main menu. Only this time the C's students were gone, with my character's evoker and armband sitting on his desk. It was 3 in the morning by this point. My partner lay next to me asleep, and I quietly let out a few tears. One of my favourite games of the year, hands down. The worst thing I can say about Persona 3 Reload is that, with how good this remake is, what incentive do I have to finally play Persona 4 when I can just wait until its inevitable remake? Given the quality of this game, it might just be worth the wait. Here to receive the award is Makoda. Too soon. On to the next game. The silver trophy for me will go to none other than Astro Bot. Astro Bot may be the platonic ideal of a platformer in the modern age. The controls are tight and responsive. The later game levels are a challenge without being Kaizo levels of difficult. The soundtrack is incredible. Then throw in the way that this game references other video games. I made a jab at Astro's Playroom about how, despite being undeniably charming, it came off a little bit self-congratulatory. It pat itself on the back just a little bit too much for me. The inclusion of PlayStation hardware as collectibles, while cool to see, does feel a little bit like a playable ad in some ways. Astro Bot, however, fixes any problem I had with that, having you finding and collecting these cute robot characters dressed as famous video game characters. Seeing icons like Kratos or Crash Bandicoot is fun and all, but for me the ones that impressed me the most were the ones of lesser known games. I expected to see Spyro and Lara Croft, but my jaw dropped when I saw Jumping Flash, a historic character from a very important platformer despite probably not being worth playing today. It's undeniably influential. The fact that they thought to include him, Mr. Mosquito, and even Klonoa? Guys, it's Klonoa! I made a video on him! I played the hell out of this game start to finish. I got all the robots and the secret final robot. I bloody loved it. Amazing game, one of the best 3D platformers I think I've ever played. Here to accept the award is Astro. With that game though in second place, what could possibly be my game of the year? Well, here's where that little foreshadowing thing comes into play, because this game, if you know me, shouldn't be a surprise at all as my game of the year. Black Myth Wukong is pretty much everything I want in a video game. I love Dark Souls, God of War and Journey to the West, and this game combines those things. The combat is so goddamn fun once you get good at it, and the later bosses, while difficult, are intensely satisfying to complete. I felt like I was going toe to toe with an equally skilled opponent, trading blows as I, the player, had to enter an ultra instinct like flow state, every move and reaction based on instinct rather than thinking about it. Once defeated, I didn't look down on the enemy, I didn't think screw you or thank God that's over or that I got lucky or anything like that. I mentally thanked them for the great duel and moved on, having just beaten a worthy adversary. I tell you as well, as a Journey to the West fan, this game is a treat, especially in the latter half. When the rake planted itself into the ground, I tell you, I was like a Smash Brothers fan reacting to a character reveal. Every time a major character from the novel appeared, I was like DiCaprio pointing at his TV. Every time a character referenced events from the book, I was like, right to the point. I mentioned it in my video, but this being a Chinese development studio really makes a difference. There's an authentic voice here that makes it stand out against other media inspired by Journey to the West. Also, I have to point out that getting to battle the 4 Heavenly Kings in a kaiju battle made me so giddy, I was grinning ear to ear the whole time. This treat came right after probably the toughest but most satisfying fight in the game. It's just so good. Now here's the part that since the actual Game Awards I've had to rewrite, so thanks a lot guys. I was originally going to talk about how I was surprised it was nominated for Game of the Year. I think this game is great, but I thought it would be looked over truthfully. Now I see the amount of discourse of people saying that it was robbed over Astro Bot. Let's put this out there once and for all. Wukong was never winning over Astro Bot. Astro Bot is the rightful winner of the Game of the Year. Astro Bot might be objectively a far better game. Plus, it was only a few months ago everyone was complaining that Wukong was just a fairly average action game. Don't think I forgot about that. And it doesn't help that the game was surrounded by controversy upon release, becoming a kind of proxy in an ongoing culture war. A vocal group of anti-woke, anti-DEI advocates hyped it up, treating its success as a symbolic victory over feminist and progressive ideals, as if the game's reception were a battlefield for larger ideological conflicts. Oh yeah, right, silly video game award show. Almost got lost in all that. Anyway, my point is, it's not my game of the year because I think it deserved Game of the Year at the Game Awards. Astro Bot might be the best game for everyone. I don't think Black Myth Wukong is the best game for everyone. No, it's my game of the year because it's the best game for me. It's like this game was custom made with me in mind. The way it resonates with me is unlike any other game that I've played this year. For that, Black Myth Wukong is officially the Gaming Backlog's Game of the Year. Here to accept their prize is the destined one. And that's essentially the show. Those were the games released this year that I played and what I thought. If you managed to watch the whole video for some reason, seriously, thank you so much. This video was such a large undertaking for something that was really just a couple of okay jokes spaced out across a bunch of boring opinions. 2024 has been such a wild year, starting this channel and seeing it grow, frankly, way faster than I thought it ever would. I seriously thought that maybe I'd get to 100 subscribers, maybe? But in half a year with no experience making online content, that's still pretty unlikely. But here we are at the end of the year with nearly 500 subscribers, which is insane to me. That's half of 1,000 people out there that like something about this channel enough to take the effort to subscribe. I honestly almost can't believe it. So to all the viewers out there, current and in the future, thank you so much. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas, and I hope 2025 is kind to you. I'll of course continue making content and continue striving to always improve what I do, always try to one-up what I did before, and always try to learn something new. Here's to all of us growing in 2025, and I hope you'll join me as I continue my journey to finish the gaming backlog.